All right, hey there, everybody. Welcome into the Basline View. That is PowerMizzou.com's pregame show for your Missouri basketball games this season. And tonight is a pretty big one in Knoxville, Tennessee. Mizzou taking on the number 6 Volunteers, number 19 versus number 6. At least for the time being. Tennessee took a big loss earlier this week. We'll see what Missouri does tonight, but we've already got some folks in here. Pocket Watch getting things started with the Super Chat, and Pocket Watch, appreciate that, man. I was actually on Jay Tate's live stream after the Auburn game today. Huge win for Auburn. I was over there, saw you over there. Checked out the Auburn stream for a little bit. A lot of happy Auburn folks after a 109, I think, to 86 win. So appreciate Pocket Watch not only hanging out with my friend Jay, but also coming over here and checking out what we are doing before Mizzou and Tennessee. We're going to roll those other SEC scores across the bottom of the screen for you. Auburn, South Carolina has already happened. Arkansas, Vandy, Florida, Georgia. There have been pretty much everybody's either already played or already playing, except for Mizzou and Tennessee. And Pocket Watch wants to know if there's any truth to a Power Mizzou brain drain special on Tuesday night. I haven't talked to Jay about it. I would consider it. I don't know how it would necessarily work with two live streams, but I'd talk to Jay about it. I like hanging out with Jay. We're going to hang out and do a podcast, I assume, on Monday afternoon, because I have to prepare on Sunday afternoon for a rather large football game that my friend Patrick Mahomes is playing in, so I'm not sure we'll record tomorrow, but we'll do that on Monday. But appreciate Pocket Watch being here. Appreciate everybody who is here already. Jacob Stouffer, hope I'm pronouncing that right, is in. So we are, 58 minutes from tip-off on SEC Network. So here's what we're going to do, lead you up to that game. We're going to kind of break down some of the matchups, talk about what's going to go into this. We'll talk a little bit about last time. We might not want to talk a whole lot about last time because last time was pretty ugly for Missouri. 73-53 in Columbia in the SEC opener on December 30th. Everybody kind of gave up then and decided that Missouri wasn't going to be any good and wasn't going to have a good season and all that. Missouri has bounced back. Tennessee has taken it on the chin a couple times since then. Lost to Alabama, lost big to Florida earlier this week. Here's the most interesting thing about this game to me. There are 7 players averaging double-figure scoring in this game. Not one of them's averaging as many as 13 points. You can see some of the stats over there to my right. Xavier Pinson, Drew Smith, Jeremiah Tillman, all in double figures for Missouri. So is Mark Smith, but I didn't include him on the graphic. For Tennessee, John Fulkerson, Victor Bailey, and Jaden Springer all averaging double figures. But again, not one of them averaging as many as 13 points. So a whole lot of balance among these two teams, and two teams who had different weeks. Yeah, like I said, Tennessee got hammered 75-49 by Florida. Rick Barnes said he hated the way his team played, basically just trashed him in the media, all that. Missouri beat beat Texas A&M last Saturday. Here's what I would recommend for any team coming off of a COVID pause. Play Texas A&M because Texas A&M is just god-awful and can't score at all. And then they played South Carolina, and South Carolina is a better team than A&M, but they've had COVID issues of their own, obviously, and not really back in the swing of things yet. They were getting beat earlier, or they did get beat earlier today, I should say, by Auburn. So they're just 3-5 on the year. So Missouri has had a good week, hasn't been tested like it is going to be tested tonight, without question. So we're going to hang out with you leading up to tip-off, and all we ask of you guys is a couple things. Put your comments in the chat. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell people what we do here before every game. We're going to hang out with you. Normally, I talk to somebody who I know who covers the other team on this show. We didn't do that this week because I felt like my friends who covered Tennessee probably were a little occupied. I don't know if you guys have heard. There have been some things happening in Knoxville this week. So I didn't want to make those guys record a 15-minute segment before a basketball game, which I'll be honest, most of them probably are barely paying attention to. So what I did instead, I reached out to Tom Hart, Rockbridge High School graduate, University of Missouri graduate, Columbia native, SEC network broadcaster. He is not doing this game tonight, but he has done Missouri games and Tennessee games this year. So I reached out to Tom Hart. We had about a 20-minute conversation. We're going to play that for you here coming up in 10, 15 minutes. We'll play that for you, let you hear Tom's perspective on Mizzou, on the Vols, on the SEC. He told some John Sunvold stories. There's some good stuff in that conversation. Then we'll come back. We'll have Mitchell Forty in the last 10, 15 minutes leading up to tip-off. We'll let you go for the game. After the game, we'll come back. We'll grab Conzo Martin's press conference, and we will upload that, and we'll do the post-game show like we do after every game. Ross says what I think a lot of people are certainly hoping in this one from Missouri's perspective. It can't be any worse than the first game between these two. I think that was a combination of a handful of things. That was Missouri being introduced to the big stage and not quite being ready for it. And now, look, I know that they had played Illinois, they had played Oregon, but this is different. This was a conference game against the league's preseason favorite, all that. The other thing I think it was Missouri playing as poorly as it could play. I mean, in every respect. And Tennessee playing really well. So what you get when you have one team that plays great and one team that's awful is what you got in Columbia on December 30th. It was 73-53. I'll be honest, guys, it wasn't that close. It was 23-4. I mean, that game was over 7 minutes in. Absolutely over. There was zero chance Missouri was coming back and winning that game. And they never even, I don't know, I think they got it within 12 maybe in the second half. I think that's as close as they got. It was certainly the worst game. Not the worst half, because the worst half Missouri has played was in Starkville. But the worst game Missouri has played the first time these two met. And Tennessee played well. I mean, I don't know if they played the greatest, but they certainly played well. So appreciate, again, all you guys jumping in here, and I'm trying to get to some of your comments before we do hit up Tom Hart. Jacob wants to know, how's Yves Pons averaging only 7 points a game? He looked like an all-star against us. Pons is really, like, he was the defensive player of the year last year in the league, and he's a great defender. He's not a great offensive player. Now, he can score, don't get me wrong. But Tennessee has a lot of guys. John Fulkerson's the interesting one to me. He's averaging 12 and 6, I think, and he's not a guy who maybe you look at first and think, hey, this is one of the better big men in the SEC, but he's turned into that. So it should be a pretty good matchup with he and Jeremiah Tillman tonight. Tillman obviously has been playing absolutely out of his head. I mean, 19-9. Kim English did Tennessee media on Thursday. He said he thinks Jeremiah Tillman's playing like an all-SEC guy, best big man in the league, and he has certainly done that the last 4 games. I think it's 19 points or 18.5 points, 9.3 rebounds the last 4 games. If he can continue that changes this whole game, like Jared says. I mean, it changes the whole game. And if Missouri can go win this one in Knoxville, it would be a statement, because I'm going to look up the SEC standings for you real quickly here. And it's, I mean, Alabama's 7-0, and they're leading the thing. But, I mean, LSU's 5-2, but they're losing to Kentucky. They're going to be 5-3. Every team in this league is going to have at least 3 losses, except for Alabama and the winner of this game tonight, Missouri and Tennessee. So the winner of this game tonight is in second place in the Southeastern Conference standings, which is a little bit crazy, especially if it's Missouri, because they started 1-2, and a lot of people kind of gave up on them, I think. Obviously, it was way too early to do that. But point being, everything that Missouri wanted is in play here in this game and the rest of this season, I should say. Sorry, a little distracted there. I'm trying to enter scores. Alabama is still leading Mississippi State by about 6, and Kentucky is now stretching it out over LSU, which looked like a house of fire a week ago and has now lost 2 games in a row. So, look, the SEC is a crapshoot is the moral of the story here. It's tough to tell on any given night what you're going to get out of anybody in this league, except for Alabama. We kind of know what you're going to get out of Alabama at this point. Even tonight, when they're not scoring 100 points, they're leading the game by 6 with 4 minutes left, and it looks like they should win. So Tennessee has been, like I said, Tennessee looked like a Final Four team in Columbia on December 30th. I mean, they came in here and just absolutely railroaded Missouri. Yves Pons in that game had 13 points, 6 rebounds, 4 block shots. John Fulkerson had 11 and 6 rebounds. Vescovi, the point guard, had 15 points. Off the bench, Jaden Springer had 13 points. Victor Bailey Jr., who had been their leading scorer coming into that game, only had 9. Josiah Jordan-James had 2, but it didn't even matter. I mean, it was just a balanced attack, 4 guys in double figures. They only shot 7 3-pointers. They made 5 of them. They shot 50% from the floor. The bigger story was the defense they played on Missouri. Missouri in that game, 36% from the field, 3 of 16 from 3, and only 18 of 30 from the line. That's a place Missouri usually does really well and did not do well at all in that game. Missouri had 1 guy in double figures. Xavier Pinson had 11 points, and he was 2 for 7 from the floor. So complete domination there, and I apologize. I've got a video playing when you look up box scores on ESPN. It likes to play videos in the background for you. But that was a complete domination. But since then, Tennessee has, I mean, we came away from that game thinking Tennessee is runaway best team in this league, maybe a Final Four team, all that. Since then, here's what they've done. Lost to Alabama at home, 71-63. Beat Arkansas at home, 79-74, which – Arkansas has been hot and cold. Beat A&M 68-54 because everybody beats A&M something to 50-something. Had a game against Vandy postponed, then beat Vandy 81-61 and lost to Florida 75-49. So they are 3-2 since beating Missouri. So it's not like they're bad, but they just haven't played as well as they played either leading into that game against Missouri or really on that night. I mean, that was, like I said, Tennessee was really good, and you combine that with what Missouri was doing, and it's you get what you got. The New Age Indian wants to know, nice screen name, does having Kim English in Tennessee give them an edge in any way? I don't really think so. I mean, it's not like Kim knows this coaching staff or these guys. It's been, 9 years since Kimmy played here. Anybody he knows is gone. No, I mean, he knows Konzo Martin. He knows some of the guys, but it's not like he is in their practices or has been involved with their scouting reports or running an offense or defense. So I don't really think it gives them an edge, other than I think Kimmy is a good coach, an up-and-coming guy. I know he handled the scouting report on Missouri the last time they played. I would assume he'll probably do that again. I don't know how Rick Barnes rotates it, but I don't think there's any special edge there. And Dave Buck wants to know, what are the keys to Pinson breaking out of the slump? Who has the bigger game, Mark Smith or Pinson? I don't know who will have the bigger game. I would guess Pinson because, Mark Smith wasn't very good against Tennessee last time, but Pinson he needs to slow down a little bit, get some of the turnovers under control. But, the thing about basketball, we talked about this a lot after the South Carolina game, is that it's not going to be the same guys every night. I mean, Jeremiah Tillman, yeah, he's been pretty consistent for this team. Drew Smith, it seems like he is, but some nights it's going to be Pinson. Some nights it's going to be Mark Smith. Some nights it's going to be Javon Pickett. There might be a night somewhere along the way where it's Torrance Watson. So Pinson's, and Konzo addressed this earlier this week. He said, yeah, he hadn't been playing as well, but it's not a concern. He'll break out of it, whether it's tonight or a future night. We'll see. Tyler Wynn says, if the last meeting was Tennessee's best game and Missouri's worst, do we chalk it up to an anomaly? we chalk it up to Missouri shouldn't be down 23-4 and lose by 20. I mean, I think if these two teams play 10 times, I think Tennessee probably wins, I don't know, 7-ish of them. I think Tennessee overall is a better team. But yes, what we saw on December 30th was absolutely an anomaly. I mean, if they play 10 times, I think very rarely is one of them going to be down 27 minutes into the game. So, yeah, I think that definitely is not likely to happen again. If that does happen again, you're certainly disappointed if you're a Missouri fan. I mean, this is a big ask to go win this game in Knoxville, but Alabama won in Knoxville. It's doable. Arkansas hung around. You don't want to go be out of the game 10 minutes in. Again, just give yourself a shot, I think, is the main thing. Jacob wants to know, does Missouri need 3 of Pinson, Mark, Tillman, and Drew to play great to win? If not, how many? Yeah, I think you need 3 of those guys to play well. Play great might be overstating it. But I think that's the recipe for Missouri, really, against any solid team, is just 3 of those guys play well, and then the other guys fill their roles. Kobe Brown, Mitchell Smith, Javon Pickett, Drew Buggs do kind of what you ask them to do, which is not necessarily go score 15 and win a game for you, but Kobe Brown, play defense and get some rebounds, score at the right time. Javon Pickett, pick your spots, give some energy off the bench. Mitchell Smith, defend, rebound. Drew Buggs, run the show, calm things down, give Pinson and Drew Smith breaks. That's the role. Hey, if one of those guys gets 15 on a given night, that's great. But it's not something you go in really counting on, is what I'm trying to say. So, once again, like I said, I did talk to Tom Hart earlier this week, and it is a pretty long conversation. Tom likes to talk. I hadn't caught up with him in a while. He's a good dude, so pretty long conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that started, and I'm going to play that for you. I'll continue to put some of your comments up on the screen and stuff like that, so please feel free to continue to talk to each other and take part in the chat, hit the like button, do all those things while this is running. But this is about a 20-minute interview, so I'm going to play that. I'm going to come back. We'll talk a little bit more and get Mitchell Forty on the line and lead you right up to tip-off at 7:30. 3, 2, 1. All right, Tom Hart joining us. And Tom, first off, man, before we get into anything about SEC basketball, Missouri, any of that stuff, I recognize that background because I've seen it on some basketball games this year. What's it been like doing your job from home?
I actually just put this one up just for you today.
Okay.
All right. This is, I don't know if folks at home can see it. There was an artist who did all of the All-American portraits at Missouri for decades. And so this is Steepo up top and Sunvold at the bottom. I got this in like 4th grade. We went to Red Rear Sports. Donna Beckett, who was a legend in Columbia and the mother of my best friend back then, took us to Red Rear to get him autographed. And it sat under my bed for like months. It was like rolled up in rubber bands. And then best Christmas gift I ever get, I come open it up one morning and my mom has had it framed and all this stuff. So I know you didn't ask about this part of it, but the funny part is one of my first games working with John Sunvold was in Tuscaloosa. And I take this with me to the game. Mm-hmm. And I'm waiting for him to go to shoot around. And I said, yeah, I'll just meet you in the bar downstairs. And I take this and I hang it up in the sports bar in the Tuscaloosa Hilton. And he walks in and, hey, Tom, how you doing? Wait, what is that? And I was like, gosh, I don't know. They must be big Mizzou basketball fans around here. Or something. He had no idea I had it. He had no idea that I, threw it in the back of my car and put it up on the wall.
The best part is, I don't know if he's told you this, but John Sunvold actually has an autographed picture of you in his basement. So,
That's the funniest. One more Sunvold story. When I worked my very first game with him, the guys I talked to said, hey, he's got a great sense of humor. He's a prankster. I mean, this guy was my idol growing up, right? I mean, that sounds weird to say, but it would be like me doing a baseball game with George Brett. Like that's a big deal. And they said, you gotta prank him. You got to mess with him a little bit, just kind of level the playing field. So the night before our first game, we go to dinner. He has no idea who I am, nor should he. And he says, Tom, where'd you go to school? I said, I went to University of Missouri. Just kind of like that. I didn't just say Mizzou. And he goes, oh, really? Where'd you grow up? I said, I grew up in Columbia, Missouri. And he goes, you did? I go, yeah. I go, where'd you go to school? And he goes, I went to Missouri. I go, that's right. You played basketball. I said, did you play with my favorite player, Prince Bridges? Like, were you around the same time he was? And he's staring at me like, is this guy really trying to pretend like he doesn't know who John Sunvold is?
That's funny.
So I couldn't keep it going. It lasted about like 45 seconds. And then finally I gave in. I said, no, I went to camp. I saw you at camp. You did your shooting drill, the whole deal.
That's awesome.
But that's not the question you asked, Gabe. So I apologize. Doing games from home, generally speaking, just to be blunt, it sucks. Like, we want to be at the game. You want to be in the building. I love shoot arounds. I love spending time with coaches and players and getting to know what makes them tick and learning more about their team that you can't just get from Zoom calls. Listen, there's a lot of benefits. I'm not getting frisked by TSA at 5 a.m. for a 6 a.m. flight. I'm not running around and running my body ragged, getting from game to game. And when the game's over, I unplug the Zoom, I go upstairs, I get to hang with the family. So that's good.
So do you guys I know you generally get each coach on a Zoom call before the game, but when you're actually calling the game, are you seeing anything other than what we're seeing on TV? I mean, do you guys have a different setup with a little bit more information or access, or no?
Not really. I don't know if you saw the national semifinal Kirk Herbstreit had to do from home, and he took a video of his setup, and I got about 6 different texts and people like, well, from other play-by-play guys and analysts, I don't have that set up. Right. No, I got a MacBook Pro and I got a monitor and I've got this, this camera and they did an amazing job getting it set up from a technological standpoint. But no, we get the game camera. We get other camera angles, but those are going into what they call a quad box, which is exactly what you would imagine it would be. They're coming out of a MacBook Pro. So I tell you, there's 2 things that make it difficult. The video quality is really what makes it hard because it's Zoom quality. So the quality you get at home is HD, but what we don't see HD. And the audio quality is terrible. So what you hear at home is different than what we hear. So we don't hear, the coach in the background. It's hard to hear whistles. We can't hear the PA announcer announce the fouls. These are minor inconveniences given what the world is going through. But it does. I catch so much flack. I deserve all the flack I get, by the way. But post game or in game, Twitter people, what you too busy to tell us who the foul was on? Like, nobody. I have no idea who the foul was on. Right. I wish I could tell you who the foul was on, or who scored that bucket, or whether or not that was a technical or over the back. I have no idea, and I just have to wait to get it sorted out.
The other thing, though, and maybe you see it differently, but I think there's a benefit to watching games from home in that watching a game on TV, I actually see a lot more than I ever saw sitting in the press box. Now, it might be different for you down courtside, but you get actual replays. Like I used to get so much crap because I'd be at a game 200 feet from the court, and I'm like, yeah, I think that foul call against Missouri was a good call. And fans are just killing me on Twitter. And I'm like, but you saw 7 replays and I just saw it live from 400 feet away. So maybe I'm wrong. Right. So I think you actually, maybe there are some benefits to it.
Yeah, the perspective of the bird's eye view from mid-court, like that camera angle, usually you can see things that you can't see even when you're sitting in the best seat in the house, right? Because there's bodies in front of you and there's 7-footers and a coach is going to come stand in front of you at times. The difference, I think, between you and me in that situation is when you're calling the game, well, right. I use my eyes more than I use any camera because I'm in control, right? That sounds really simple, but I want to see if there might be a play happening on this end of the court. I want to see, in a Mizzou perspective, like I want to see what Konzo's doing on this end of the court. Like he just took Tillman out of the game. What kind of coaching is going on at the end of the bench? And I can look over there even when a play is going on over here because that's the most important thing to me. I don't have that liberty anymore when I'm doing it from home. So that makes it hard.
So you mentioned Mizzou, and it's a good jumping off point there. I mean, I don't know. This team Konzo's been telling us for like, I think about 2.5 seasons. No, we're good enough to win the SEC. And I never saw it last year. And then this year, they might actually have a team that is good enough. I mean, I've been surprised by it. Have you?
Yeah. I've been surprised by how they've won. to your point, and to Conzo's point, like I thought they were a good enough team to win more than they were winning last year. Right. I didn't think they were good enough to win the league. Right. Maybe that's something that he sees in October, November, and every day in practice that didn't come to fruition on the court. I did not think this would ever be a team that would be a top 15 team because of Jeremiah Tillman. Right. To me, that's the biggest surprise. If you were to tell me that the Smiths would play incredible in the backcourt and the shots would fall and this would be a team that would have an outside threat and a downhill threat in Pinson, I could say, yeah, I can see those pieces coming together. Like they could be a guard-oriented offensive team that plays with tempo and still be a good defensive and rebounding team because that's in Conzo's DNA. Sure, yeah, they could reach new heights. But to do so as an offense that relies on Jeremiah Tillman and relying on Jeremiah Tillman as a rim protector, I didn't see that efficiency coming.
Yeah, year 4, you're finally seeing. And look, I've said about Tillman, I mean, every game you're going, well, let's just see how much longer this can last, because 4-4 with 4 fouls could be right around the corner. But he seems to be a little bit more consistent. I think Saturday's going to be a big test. They play Tennessee. By the time people hear this, it'll be like 30 minutes from tip-off. Yves Pons is in the middle. Tennessee obviously ran Missouri out of its own gym a while ago. I'm not sure this is the night I would want to be facing Tennessee after Rick Barnes just basically told his team, I don't think you guys are any good, and I didn't think you tried very hard against Florida. I'm not sure this is the night I want to face them in Knoxville.
No, it'll be tough. But I think you look at Tennessee's struggles, they go back more than just the Florida game. I mean, they rose into the top 6, maybe top 5. I don't know where their ranking peak was, based on an all-around team with incredible balance. And I believed in them from the get-go. The same reason I believed in Missouri, in the sense that, and it's so odd, Gabe, to be talking about sports or basketball in particular in this vacuum with COVID surrounding everything else. So it bears saying that the belief in teams like Tennessee and Missouri that I had from the get-go was that these were teams that knew their coach, that knew what they were going to be asked to do, that knew what they're going to be asked to run, because everything else is going to be a total crapshoot, right? So there was some stability in the rosters, and Tennessee had roster stability plus talent, 5-star talent that they brought in. I really believed in Tennessee first half of the season. The last 2 games have been really tough for them, and it exposed some warts in that they haven't had anybody step up to be a go-to guy. I mean, I still think Jeremiah Tillman can have a great game in this one. Fulkerson should be a senior leader for them. He has struggled, and he took it on his shoulders after the Florida game, saying that the lack of leadership is my fault. He hasn't been as productive as he could be. He's not uber athletic. He's versatile, but he's not uber athletic. And so I think, to me, I think it would be foolish to say, well, Jeremiah Tillman can't have a big game against Tennessee. He absolutely can, because of the Fulkerson matchup. Pons is a great shot blocker. A lot of these block shots come on help side defense. I mean, he's an amazing leaper. He covers ground in a hurry. He runs 94 feet. But if Missouri gets in a situation where Tillman is one-on-one, that's a matchup that they can be victorious in.
So I know I should have researched every single game you've done this year and watched them all. So I don't know which of these teams you have.
I don't even remember. Yeah. I don't even remember which games I've done. So that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know which of these teams you haven't had. But, I mean, obviously all of us coming into SEC play after they were 5-3 and lost to Western Kentucky saw Alabama just running roughshod over this league, right? I mean, this was
it's crazy. Yeah, totally predictable. I think what's lost in the hype about Alabama's offense and the way they play, and I don't mean hype like it's undeserved. I mean, that entire game against LSU was incredible. The first half was insane.
I don't know if Missouri's hit 23 threes this season and Alabama hit 23 that night. So,
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, the floor space, and you go back to their Kentucky win the week before, may have been just as impressive because they did it with 3s and 2s. They did the same thing against LSU. Look at the shot chart. Like, if you're a basketball nerd, a stats nerd, like, that was the perfect game plan. But what gets lost in this is that they've become an incredibly efficient defensive team. he came in and the first thing Nate Oates did was said, hey, we're going wide open. There is no such thing as a bad shot. I want you to have freedom. Get out there and shoot it. And I think some of his guys looked at that and said, I appreciate the freedom, because Avery Johnson had us slowing down, running new sets, putting new stuff in every day, really treated them like NBA guys. And I don't think that was a good idea. I think he gave them at times too much to handle. But Nate Oates gave them this offensive freedom. And I think last year they took that to mean that they had defensive freedom too. And they've gotten a lot better on that end of the floor. There are going to be nights where the shots don't fall. And the question is this style of play sustainable in college like it is in the NBA? Well, in the NBA, there is no single elimination tournament, right? And not only do they have a larger sample size over the course of the season, but also once you get in the postseason, you're winning series, not single games. Mm-hmm. I think that's a legitimate concern for Alabama in the NCAA tournament. That being said, if they continue to play efficient defense, they've got a much wider margin for error than the team they were last year, who shot a lot of threes but didn't play any defense. They still don't make them at a great rate.
Right.
I mean, they're like 33, 35%. I mean, that's okay if you're playing good defense and getting easy twos. But they're a fascinating team to watch. And I'm curious, Gabe, if more teams then don't adopt that style. Villanova won a national championship with it a couple years ago. Does this become the new hot thing? Is this the spread offense, what was to college football, what could become in college basketball?
Well, the best tweet I saw after Alabama's win over LSU was Alabama being so dominant is ruining college basketball. I mean, that's the argument. So you touched on Kentucky. Like, we'll kind of wrap up on this. So you look through this league. I mean, Alabama's making the tournament. Tennessee's making the tournament. LSU and Missouri certainly should make the tournament, I think. What is this? And I know, look, we don't even know how many teams are making the tournament, what the tournament looks like. But if we have something approaching an NCAA tournament, what do you see this as like who else is in that mix? Florida, Mississippi State? Is this like a 6-bid league?
Yeah, I think it's a 6-bid league. I think that's fair. Florida, Mississippi State deserve to be in the discussion. It's so hard to predict because we don't know how many games are being played, right? I mean, think about it within Missouri. Like, how do you view the Billikens right now? Are they a tournament team? We don't know. They haven't played. I mean, they looked like it when they played, but now they haven't played. And then adding to the uncertainty will be the conference tournaments. No one's asked me, and I shouldn't say this out loud because it would take money out of my pocket. Like, as far as my budget is concerned, I need as many games to be played as possible.
Right.
But if you're Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, you could even put Missouri in that mix. I think there's an argument to be made that once you get to March, you might say, gosh, we're better off just going to Indianapolis and getting ready for the NCAA tournament. Our health and our roster health is more important than a line or two of seeding. Now, that would do two things, right? If you gave teams the opportunity to opt out, and if I were Greg Sankey, I would get them on a call and say, you guys have this opportunity. But really, I'm only talking to the top 5 or 6 of you, right? Because I want Vanderbilt to play, and I want Ole Miss to play, and I want everybody else to be there. Oh, by the way, that makes this tournament more winnable for you. Like, Scottie Pippen could win a tournament. There's no doubt he could win three games in 3 days for Vanderbilt. But yeah, that's the only way Kentucky's getting in at this point, and we don't know what the landscape is going to look like come to March.
Well, and the problem with that, you know this as well as I do. I can say it. I'm not sure you can. Is who wants those games is ESPN and the SEC network and all that. They want as many games as they can possibly have. So they're not. The solution I've actually heard that I kind of like is that week that they have built into the regular season, or those 4 or 5 days at the end. Some of these games that need to be made up, just play them all in Nashville. Just go into a bubble for 2 weeks, right? Send everybody down there, get the makeup games in, play the tournament. Now, I don't know how like a Conzo Martin's going to feel about the possibility of playing 6 games in 8 days or something like that, but everybody has to adapt a little. The last thing Missouri fans will be mad if I don't ask you this, since I know you did some of their games. You've probably talked to them as much as I have. Just what are your impressions of Eli Drinkwitz here in year 1?
I thought it was a fantastic season. It couldn't have been much better in my estimation. I go back to talking about this vacuum. We've forgotten these teams are dealing with COVID-19, and the coaches are asked to do things they've never been asked to do before. And the coaches that I've talked to throughout the course of the season have said, off the record, like, this is the hardest. So, and plenty on the record too, but this is the hardest year ever, because I want to get in my guys' faces. I want to motivate them, and sometimes they need punishment, and I want to give them punishment to try and motivate them as well. And I can't, because my star cornerback is going to opt out and get ready for a draft that he's not going to be drafted in. It's just the reality of college football. So I think Eli's secret to his success, and this will be the blueprint for his success going forward, is, it sounds cheesy to say, but it's this team first attitude. This, we're all in this together. Guys that enjoy being around each other, enjoy the game. We take that for granted in sometimes, especially during a pandemic. So no, I thought it was a great start. I thought the quarterback situation was much better than anyone expected, especially at the beginning of the season. And there are very few teams that are going to go into the spring, whatever that looks like, or the summer, with momentum. And even despite how the season ended for Mizzou, I think Missouri is one of those teams that's going to go into the offseason with momentum. I mean, you've built the foundation, you have a chance to add to that, and you have a chance to push it forward. A lot of teams going into the offseason either going backwards or just stagnant. And I think as a first-year coach, nobody wants to coach in a pandemic, but I think it went really well for him.
Well, look, I run a message board, Tom. I know you're on Twitter a lot. Like, when the ball goes up, COVID doesn't exist, man. Then it's just about then we're back to firing people and paying them $21 million to
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yep.
It's crazy, especially because the coaches who struggle the most during this are the ones that I just referenced. The people that build relationship with their guys, that are able to be tough on them one moment because they're going to hug them the next. And whether that's Buzz Williams or Frank Martin or Mark Stoops or John Calipari, whomever, those are the ones that end up struggling, and the ones that are like, hey man, grab your box lunch on the way out, we'll see you for practice tomorrow. And they don't, right. Those, oddly enough, are the ones that are having success. So it's fascinating to me that, millions of dollars in buyouts when you were asking this guy to do something that he had never had to do before, and we're just going to kind of forget about all of that. It's shocking to me.
Yeah. Well, Tom, appreciate the time, man. We've taken plenty of it. Maybe there will be a time we'll see each other at a game again. And if this was the type of thing we ever did, I would buy you a beer. But obviously we are much more well-behaved than that. So.
Yeah. We are much more well-behaved. Yeah, that would be unbecoming. Or the reference that I snuck in the other day, you were at the game, so you weren't watching, a Friday afternoon at Les Bourgeois, if we wanted to feel fancy.
This is a good place to end. I've remembered many times going to Les Bourgeois. I have very rarely remembered leaving Les Bourgeois.
There's a walk up in the parking lot that is strewn with the bodies of our fallen comrades.
All right, Tom, I appreciate it, man. We'll catch up down the road. Always fun catching up with Tom Hart. Missouri fans love him doing Missouri games because he's dropping Mizzou and Columbia references all over. He's a Rockbridge guy, a Mizzou guy, but he knows his stuff all over the league, which is why I thought this would be a good time to have him on. Like I said, the Tennessee guy is a little bit busy, but Tom knows this league forward and backward, football, basketball, all that, and I wanted to sneak in an Eli Drinkwitz question, and so appreciate the amount of time that he spent talking with us there, helped me fill the show. But I hope it gave you guys some good stuff, some views of the basketball stuff, but also some kind of behind the scenes stuff about what goes into his job and how different things are and all that this year. So he is not on the call tonight for the game in Knoxville. I forget who is. It's two guys I've heard of. Joe Klein, I know, is doing the game. I forget the play-by-play guy, but it's not Hart and Sunvold, which are my personal favorites to listen to, and not just on Missouri, but on any game, because I think they have a good chemistry and they know what they're talking about. But tip-off at 7:30 on SEC Network, which is about 20 minutes away, which means In about 5 minutes, we're going to call Mitchell Forty and talk to him about that one. We invite all your guys' comments, questions, anything you guys want to talk about for the next few minutes leading up to this one. Please do. Around the SEC, Alabama closed out Mississippi State and LSU beat Kentucky. So everything else in the league is now a final. I'm sorry, Kentucky beat LSU. I said that incorrectly. Kentucky won that one 82-69. So everything else in the league is now a final. We'll scroll those scores across the ticker at the bottom for you. Alabama is now 8-0 in this league, minimum 2-game lead. And it's only a 2-game lead or 2.5-game lead if Tennessee beats Missouri tonight. Missouri beats Tennessee, then Alabama's got a 3-game lead on everybody almost halfway through. And they're starting to talk about like 1 seed, 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, which is absolutely insane. But for Missouri, this is a huge opportunity game, right? If they win this game, they are 4-2 in the league, which puts them, as I said, in second place all by themselves. And now look, everybody's played different numbers of games and all that, and there's some things to be worked out. But if Missouri were to win this game, they they make up a tiebreaker against Tennessee, but they also just put themselves in a position where, hey, top 4 is looking very, very realistic. And to me, that's been the goal for this team all year, is to finish top 4. And yeah, Tyler's asking if Missouri wins, are they second in the league? They are technically. Now, they would be 4-2. Kentucky and Tennessee would be 4-3. LSU is actually 5-3. So LSU will have a slightly worse winning percentage. But again, it's so hard to tell with everybody playing different numbers of games, and it's pretty interesting. I actually asked Conzo Martin about this earlier this week. I said, have you guys had any discussions for how you do things like seeding the SEC tournament? Because what if you get there and one team is 10-6 and another team is 9-5, so they've actually got a better winning percentage, but they've played fewer games. And Conzo said the coaches haven't discussed that. They'll leave it all up to the admins. But Tom brought up a pretty interesting point too. There's going to be teams that probably get to that league tournament and go, hey, we're already in the NCAA tournament. I don't need to go to Nashville for 4 days and not just have my guys wear and tear and maybe get hurt, but like potentially expose them to this virus, and then they can't play in the NCAA tournament. I mean, think about if you're Missouri and you got these kids, nobody on this roster has ever played in the NCAA tournament. I think that's false. Mitchell Smith was on the team that did. But for the most part, this team's never played in the NCAA tournament, and they're very likely to. They probably will. I mean, think about if you go down to Nashville and all of a sudden, hey, something happened and, man, you can't go play in the tournament that really matters. Or even worse, hey, one of the teams, I'd say Missouri took it down there, and then played Tennessee and Florida and LSU. Well, now you got 4 teams that can't play in the tournament, and the league is losing millions of dollars. So it'll be interesting to see, but I hadn't really thought about it until Tom brought it up when we talked on Thursday afternoon that these league tournaments, like, it might really benefit from teams to not play them. But Jacob Estes brings up a good point. Would Sankey let teams opt out? It seems unlikely. Look, the TV people want these games. I'm sure the leagues are going to want these games. They're scheduled. I wouldn't think opting out of the league tournament would be looked favorably upon. But if you really think about it, there is an argument to be made why it's better for your team. All this is obviously way down the line. We're talking about end of season stuff, and there is a huge game tonight. Tips off in 17 minutes, and Tyler wants to know, is Mizzou capable of pushing the pace of this game and running a bit? They have to. I mean, they have to, because they need to get some easy baskets, especially against this Tennessee defense. And if they don't do it, they can't win. They had 20 fast break points against South Carolina. I don't know if they have to have 20, but they've got to have 10, 12, 14 in that range. You've just got to find a way to get easy baskets for 2 reasons. First of all, if Missouri sets up in half-court offense, they really aren't very good. a lot of times. And second of all, if Missouri sets up in half-court offense, Tennessee is really good in half-court defense. So you're going to have to get out and try to push it and beat Tennessee down the floor a few times. And Sam brings up, kind of a good point. Tennessee is likely to come out angry after what happened in the last game. And Missouri is going to have to answer that bell. They don't have to be ahead at the under 12 timeout, but they can't be down 23-4 like they were last time. I mean, I know that's the kind of analysis you guys come here for. Obviously, you can't be down 23-4 7 minutes into this game. You got to give yourself a chance, and I think really that's probably all Missouri fans really want is just go into this one and give yourself a shot, which they never really did last time. We're going to now bring Mitchell Forty in to talk about it a little bit from the other studios, the other home office, not in Knoxville, Tennessee. What's up, Mitch? How you doing, man?
Doing good. How about you?
Hanging in. Talked to Tom Hart. He felt like half my show. It was fantastic. We talked about the winery. I mean, it was some time with Tom Hart. So,
yeah.
But no, we were just talking about before you came on. I mean, there's not Missouri's past like moral victories and stuff, but step one of this game is just don't like have it be over 7 minutes in like the last one. I mean, that game was done at the under 12 timeout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, like, that's kind of the biggest key in my mind is just don't get overwhelmed early, because Tennessee is just not the type of team you can come from behind on. They play really good defense, and they are happy to take the air out of the ball, and they don't really turn the ball over. So, if it comes out like last time, and I'm like, look, I think Tennessee should be have plenty of fire early. So if it starts out like last time, Missouri's in trouble. That said, I did kind of think Missouri was a little shell-shocked just because Tennessee's defense and athleticism was not like something it had faced before. So you would think, having seen it before, they'll be a little more prepared this time around.
Well, and it seemed like to me, and I know they would never say this. Look, I know they'd played Illinois and they played Oregon and all that, but league play is different, and opening league play against the team that's supposed to win it when you're ranked for the first time in like 6 years, I thought the moment was just a little too big for Missouri that night, and it shouldn't be tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And now you've settled kind of into the rhythm of league play, sort of. I know they had a little break there, but you've seen them before, so you're not going to get surprised by anything. I mean, the expectation should definitely be make this one competitive.
And like the flip side is Missouri was awful that night, and it's kind of bounced back a little bit. Tennessee was really good that night and hasn't looked that way since. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to lie and say I've watched every game they've played or anything, but even the wins have been, they beat A&M, whatever. Everybody beats A&M. Everybody beats Vandy. They beat Arkansas by 5, got beat at home by Alabama. So it wasn't just that Florida game. They haven't played that way since that game.
For sure. Yeah. No, that was the first time I had watched Tennessee this year because they didn't play much in the non-con and didn't play really anyone good in the non-con. And so, watching that game in Columbia, I was like, man, I think this might be a Final Four team. And that's possible, but they have not. That was definitely their best basketball they've played of the season. So, I think this will be more competitive this time around.
It was interesting when I was looking at the numbers of this one. This game has 7 guys in double figures, and not one of them averages 13 points. I mean, these have to be the 2 most balanced teams in the league, if not maybe in the country, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting is, Missouri's really balanced, but balanced teams I think are a little bit tougher on them. Like, they were able to withstand that one guy from Oregon getting, I forget what it was, like 30 and 15 or something like that. And Io from Illinois having a really big game. And South Carolina's pretty top heavy. But when you got, guys like Tennessee does, and also Tennessee shot the ball really well. I mean, they made like their first 7 shots. I think they shot over 50% in that first matchup. But like when it's a lot. I think it's harder for this team to defend when you've got. I mean, it's probably harder for anyone to defend when you've got 5 guys who could legitimately score at any time.
Yeah, Jacob Estes brings up an excellent point. No chance you have to abandon us because of the national. Nobody's going to come into your living room and play the national anthem.
I might. Maybe I'll just play it, and just stand up and cut it off.
It'll be an excuse. You'll just like hit the anthem and be like, "Sorry, I got to go, guys. I'm out."
So. Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at this Tennessee team, it's hard to say, "Hey, here's the guy I think you need to stop." I mean, Yves Pons he's a great defensive player, but he's not this huge threat offensively. John Fulkerson's their leading scorer, but I don't know. I feel like Missouri actually has an edge there. I actually think the guy that kind of makes the whole thing go is Vescovi, the point guard.
Well, he's the one guy that is, pretty consistent from three and can get hot, like as Missouri saw, I think 2 years in a row now against Missouri, he's hit 3 or 4 threes. And, in a game that's going to be probably a little bit of a brawl, you get 2, 3, 4 threes in a quick span, that can really change the game. I agree that Missouri could have the edge down low, but I do think the Fulkerson-Tillman matchup is a big deal in this game. I think if one team wins that matchup decisively, their odds of winning the game go up quite a bit.
Because in this 4-game stretch, has Tillman really faced another good big guy? Because I mean, the Arkansas game, Arkansas's big guy was Missouri's MVP in that game. He was like 0 for 14.
Yeah. Mississippi State's got a couple solid big guys.
And he did play well.
Tolu Smith. And he played well in that one. But aside from that, I mean, not to the caliber of Fulkerson, I would say.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a broken record, but he's the key to this team. I mean, if he comes out and has 19-9 again, Missouri at the very least is going to be in this game.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, I think Tennessee has a little bit of the edge and balance and just kind of matchup. I think Tennessee is a tough matchup for Missouri, but Jeremiah Tillman is capable of being the best player on the floor. And, could potentially, I think, do enough to separate Missouri and to lift to a win. I mean, if you're talking about, one guy going for 19 and 10 or something like that, like he's been doing consistently. I mean, that's something Missouri was sorely missing in the first game. And then that just opens up so much else because, this offense was just so stagnant the first time they played Tennessee. If you get Tillman going like he was against South Carolina, that's going to create a lot more opportunities where, you're not going to have 2 guys helping over and blocking every shot from a guard who tries to penetrate.
I think the difference in these two teams from the 20,000-foot view is I think they're both really balanced, but I think Rick Barnes might just have a little bit more that he feels like he can count on every night. And maybe by the end of the season or even in 3 weeks, Konzo has that too, but I'm not sure he has it yet because every player on this team has gone through a couple week stretch where you just go, what's happening here? I mean, Drew Smith went through it, seems to have come out of it. Mark Smith has been going through it. You hope last weekend was a sign that he's coming out of it. Xavier Pinson is kind of going through it right now. So I think in Tillman, again, we hesitate to say he's a guy you can count on. So I'm just not sure that Konzo ever goes into a game knowing, okay, I'm definitely getting this.
Yeah, it's, one of the nice things about being balanced is, you can have guys struggle and people around them kind of up their game and pick it up. But you're absolutely right. We have not seen a stretch where, all of Missouri's key guys, all their kind of, I would say, big four of the 2 Smiths, Pinson and Tillman are all playing well at the same time. So obviously, you say that their ceiling could be higher if we see that. Now, also, I mean, that may never happen. But yeah, I think I do agree that there are definitely everyone on this team. You're not saying oh man, he's for sure going to do this tonight. It's always well, we've seen him have some rough games, so we'll see. Hopefully, we get the good version on this day.
Yeah, and pretty interesting. I mean, given what else happened in the league before you came on, we were talking about. I mean, if Missouri wins this game, they're second place in the SEC. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, like, it's so much, of just, I think, the football mindset, but we always try to be, make these statements down here like, okay, yeah, the top few teams are separating themselves. This is happening. But, like, really and truly, everyone in this league can lose to everyone else on a given night, except maybe Alabama if they keep shooting like they are. Although, I mean, I think even they are due to have an off night at some point. But yeah, I mean, LSU, I thought after last week, LSU's, they're going to be a, top 2 or 3 team in this league. They've just lost 2 games by a combined like 50 points, and like I knew their defense wasn't very good, but watching this Kentucky game, I was actually like, wow, that's worse to me than the Alabama thing, where it's not like Alabama just got hot from 3. Like, Kentucky cannot shoot; they're terrible at it. Like Missouri, they're like in like the 28% range, and they were getting wide open shots and knocking them down. So everyone's got flaws except maybe Alabama.
Right, and Alabama, after tonight's game, Alabama is guaranteed to have at least a 2.5 game lead in the SEC. I mean,
that's crazy.
Missouri and Tennessee, the winner of this game will only have 2 losses. Every other team will have already lost at least 3 games and played no more than 8. So yeah, wide open. I don't know what to expect. But again, I think I think if you're a Missouri fan, you go into this one saying, hey, the under 8 timeout, give us a shot. Like, we want to have a shot with 8 minutes left in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you want to see Missouri, just get off to a better start. Run, I think, just a better offense, less stagnant. I thought last game there was just so many times where one guy was driving and everyone else was just kind of standing around watching, or they threw it into Tillman and everyone else was just kind of standing around. You want to see that improve, cut down on the turnovers. I think they had 21 in that first matchup. That's just, there's no way you're beating Tennessee with 21 turnovers. So, and then I think if you do those things, certainly, you should have a chance, unless like Tennessee comes out and shoots 70%, and then you just kind of tip your cap.
I think you've got to find a way to run and get 12 fast break points. Get 6 possessions where they can't get set up and you get an easy basket. So, yeah, well, appreciate it. We made it through finally without a national anthem. So, so that's good news. But we'll let you run, man. I'll finish up and we'll see you after the game.
Sounds good.
All right. So Mitchell Forty is going to have coverage for you guys on Power Mizzou all day long. All night long, I should say. He will have stuff during the game for you. And then he will be writing post-game while I am going to be here with you guys. Hopefully most of you, hopefully maybe some of your friends as well, on the post-game show. That will happen right after, basically, Konzo Martin's press conference. So the way we always do post-game, whenever the game ends, we jump on Zoom, wait for Konzo. It can take anywhere between 10 and 30 minutes. We never know for sure. Depends on how long the radio interview takes, how quick he's trying to get out of there, all that. But we generally talk to him for about 10, 15 minutes. I'll record that and immediately then come on the post-game show and start the post-game show with his press conference. So it's a 7:30 game. We are guessing game ends 9:30-ish. We're hoping to have the post-game show for you starting by 10. Could be a little bit before, could be a little bit after, just depending on how things go in Knoxville. But appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Take one more look there at some of the stats, the key players. Number 19, Mizzou. Number 6, Tennessee. Basically for second place in the SEC right now. Tip-off just a couple of minutes away on the SEC Network. Appreciate you guys being here. Before you leave, hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, because subscribing, what that's going to do for you, you can sign up for alerts when we go live. So let's say, hey, we think the post-game show is going to start at 10. Let's say the game goes quick. We start at 9:40. You'll get an alert. Hey, we're live on YouTube. You guys can come check it out. So we'll see you back here in 2-3 hours after Mizzou and Tennessee. Enjoy the game. Thanks for watching. We'll catch up.